congratulations. You're most welcome. Will you kindly raise your hands? In case. Dr. Walid, yes. Well, I know. And who else? So the recent Surah Sahib, I should give you the first opportunity, please.
सवाल उर्दू में करूँ या अंग्रेजी में? The other day I was talking to a friend of mine.
Could you kindly raise the level of this microphone to your own height? Yes.
The other day I was talking to a friend of mine who is not from the Jamaat.
Yes.
And he raised the question that while not appreciating slavery, why did Islam not do away with slavery with one stroke like it did away with usury or interest and other things? When it considered it to be bad and awful, then why did it allow it under certain conditions for a long time? So there is a bit of a philosophy there.
Yes, yes.
So I request that...
did you not effectively deal with this question?
See, I told him that according to the international law of wars, the other people who were invading the Muslim territories, they were taking slaves, and therefore as a countermeasure one had to almost do it. But I was myself, you see, not very sure of...
Right. All right, please sit down. The fact is that there are a few reasons why it could not do away or did not want to do away with slavery at one stroke of the pen. The fact is that during the war customs of those days, both parties who went into war with each other had a customary right to enslave the prisoners of war. And there was no other system, no other institution which could take care of the prisoners of war at all. Imagine yourself, go back to those times and imagine there was no institutional prisons at all. There was no such thing as modern prisons or modern war camps. It was impossible for those people to even think in these terms. So the only way they could dispose of their prisoners was to distribute them to the various people. And when the other party, the party which is opposed to Islam, they, according to the customs, imprisoned the Muslim soldiers and enslaved them, and also behaved very cruelly both to men and women. The least Islam could do was, in retaliation, to imprison their soldiers and not to be cruel to them. That was the only option left for Islam. So the system of slavery was inherited by the people of the world, and because the enemies of Islam initiated wars, and Islam never made an offensive warfare against any people, so the responsibility of the consequences of such wars also lay in the direction of the enemies, not with Islam. So what can you imagine if Islam had done away with the system of slavery with one stroke, as you suggested? What would Islam do with the prisoners of war of the enemies? How could they be looked after? How could they be handled? They couldn't be just abandoned to go free in the country and do whatever they pleased. There was a potent danger from that direction. And because there was no system to look after them, so they had to be relegated individually to various people, and they were held responsible for their looking after them. So the first necessity was to look after the prisoners of war, and that is the only system which was recognized. Now once they were enslaved, if the other party had put them to their various tasks and they followed the old customs of slavery, and Islam did not follow that and made them only burdens on a people who were made object of aggression. So the punishment would not be meted out to the enemy but to the people who are the object of aggression. So that would be very unjust disposal of this question. So there is no way out but to tolerate that system of slavery for a while, and with the condition that nobody would be permitted to be enslaved by any other means. That is exactly what the Holy Quran has said. Until not only skirmish, but a regular war is fought with full bloodshed, slaves are not permitted to be taken. There is a definite verse of the Holy Quran in which the Holy Prophet is mentioned that unless the Holy Prophet goes into a regular war, and not just a skirmish, a full-scale war with the enemy, slaves cannot be taken. So that was the first solution, or the first step towards the solution of this problem. The second was that people had invested in this trade for a long time, and the economic system of the country was dependent on this for a very long time. Not only in Mecca and Medina, but in other places, parts of the world where Islam was spreading gradually. And if you completely ignore the part which the slaves took in the economic system of that age, then you don't know your history at all. You have to reckon with this question as an economic question as well. While usury in those days did not play as important a role in the economy of the people in those times, there is a marked difference between the conditions of those times and the conditions of today. Today, usury has become the most important problem, gravest problem with us, because most of the capitalistic world is entirely dependent on running of its economic wheel on the system of usury, or the bank interest system. In those days, that was just a private affair, and it was not used for the enhancements of trade at all. Almost it was non-existent at that time. All the usury we know of that time was to exploit the poverty of the people who stood in need. And that could be done away with one stroke. And that had to be done away with one stroke, because there was no necessity. Yet it created a lot of damage. It caused a lot of damage. So it is the wisest decision which Allah took. Of course Allah always takes the wisest decisions. But one can prove it to the people, non-Islamic world of today, that if they look at the question just as in an objective manner, without being involved as enemies of Islam, they can clearly see the differences between these two. The slavery at that time, as I have already mentioned, was a had become a regular ordinary way of life with the people, and was deeply involved with the economy of the country, not only one country but almost all the entire world. So what Islam did to do away with the slavery was to propose solutions which would remove the shock which was to be felt by the economy, or rather stagger it out and gradually do away with the slavery. But there were certain parts of the slavery which had to be done away immediately. That was where the slaves were treated ill or like inhuman beings, like beasts. That side of the slavery was immediately looked after by Islam. And Islam did not wait to gradually introduce rules and regulations governing the relationship between master and slave. As far as I know, the moment Islam came into being, the entire attitude of the masters towards slave also took shape immediately. A completely revolutionary attitude. And we don't know even 1 year of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life where this revolutionary treatment of the masters to the slave was not introduced. So there was no hurry anyway, because the ugly features of slavery were done away with. And immediately, as I said, even before Islam came into being, the conduct of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam towards his own slave was to be the future guideline for the rest of the Muslims. And that conduct was of such an excellent quality that when Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself wanted his slave to leave him and go to his parents who had discovered him after a very long search for the lost child, the child refused. Not only refused liberty, but refused to join his parents and the family and to be rehabilitated, because he loved him so much. And if you read a chapter in the book Khatamun Nabiyyin, written by Hazrat Khalifa Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmad Sahib, then you will understand in detail what I mean. The treatment to the slaves as dictated by Islam and as dictated by the conduct of Muhammad himself, which the Holy Quran tells us that is essential for us to follow, is so clearly different from the previous customs of slavery that there is completely no comparison whatsoever, no similarities. I can quote one or two instances. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Muslims, his followers, that the slaves should be fed with the same food as you feed yourself and your family. They should be clothed as you clothe yourself. You should not put them to any task which you can't do it yourself, out of shame or some concept of honor. And occasionally you should serve your slaves and let them sit on the table and you wait upon them. And these are just a few examples which were immediately translated into action by the companions, and he prohibited them to beat their slaves as well. Once Abu Masood reports that he was beating his slave when he heard Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's voice. It was so harsh and so angry that he trembled, and he knew what was coming to him. So he immediately said, Ya Rasulullah, I liberate my slave. And he said, yes, you have done well, otherwise you would have gone to hell. Again, about Hazrat Ali we read that he wanted to purchase a cloth. There was just one piece which would suffice, only suit for him. And he insisted that he must have another piece. So the shopkeeper knew that he had no grown-up son of his height. Why should he get two pieces of the same type? So he insisted, he said, no, I want one for my slave of the same color and the same style and the same piece. And this was a common practice. So first of all, Islam's treatment of the slavery was to do away with the inlet of slavery and bind it to the wars which were an occasional process. Otherwise, no one had a right, according to Islam, to enslave anyone else. Number two, Islam gave rights to all slaves to demand liberty from their masters And if the masters refused on payment of what they had spent, there were two sources from which the slaves were made. One was through trade of slavery. Those who had already become slaves and lost their liberty. So that was the second source of slavery. This was done away with in so many ways. One of them was that the slaves were given the right to demand liberty by payment of what had been spent upon them. It was quite fair. Because they had inherited that economy, at least they were entitled to get as much as they had spent on the slaves. Like the usury, when it was done away with, the capital was not washed out. Even if somebody had taken a lot of interest on that capital previously, it was not counted towards the capital. The capital stood intact. And according to the injunctions of the Holy Quran, the capital had to be paid back anyway. So exactly this approach was adapted towards slavery, and the slave had a right, and if the master refused, then he could go to the state. And this was exactly what was practiced. We know many incidents when slaves went to Hazrat Umar or some other Khalifa and said, I want mukatabat, which means that I should be permitted to pay not immediately, in installments. When he was liberated first, then, like hire purchase system, he became his own possessor, his own master. Then he would earn, and as he earned, he would pay back. So in that way it was done away with immediately. This feature is not noticed by those who look from a distance, who don't know the details of Islamic approach to slavery. Secondly, Islam suggested, not suggested, but dictated that for such and such crimes or negligences or omissions, the punishment should be the liberation of slaves. And that was done in so many instances that almost, if you read the Holy Quran, you are surprised. It almost as one option you find in every crime or omission that to liberate the slave is also accepted a way of punishment or penance. So that was also one way which started the liberation of slaves in that time. But even apart from that, the Holy Quran, by way of an act of goodness which is so much favored by Allah, has mentioned liberation of slaves so often in such strong terms, without any muqadbat, without any reward, without any sin on your part. Just Islam declared it to be an act of piety and door for the slaves, and made it larger and larger according to the raising of the standard of piety. And in Islamic history we come across such incidents that some rich companions of the Holy Prophet liberated 60,000 slaves in one day by buying them and then releasing them. Like some philanthropist people, when they see the caged birds, they feel pity and they buy them and then liberate them. So at large scale, slaves were liberated like this. And those who remained in slavery, they were better off, much better off than the servants of today. Now this comparison is completely forgotten by those who object to the system of slavery in Islam. They think the system of slavery in Islam is that which was in vogue in Europe for many centuries, which was practiced in America, for instance, or it was practiced by the colonialists in Africa and other countries. They know only, the common thing between the two is only the word slave. Otherwise, what they permit today Islamic slavery was a better system of service than the normal system of becoming a servant to somebody or a laborer in some factory. The rights of laborer of today are less than the rights of slaves in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the following times. And this is why even today, in the while Islam is in a very poor state to be found in many Muslim countries of the Middle East, yet they are much more kinder to their servants today than the Western people who think they are liberated and who are modern and more civilized are to their servants and their employees today. You know, if you go to a millionaire's house in Saudi Arabia, for instance, his chauffeur will be found sitting in the sofa in the main drawing room, and he will be discussing things with the family members like he is one of them, and nobody would be able to recognize him as a chauffeur. Only when he is told, and gently so, to drop you at some place, then you will realize that he was a chauffeur and not a member of the family. And the children respect him, and he is treated alike, and he eats from the same table. So despite the fact that so much damage has been done to Islamic values in the modern world of Islam, yet at least this much remains intact. The system which the civil attitude towards slaves, which they inherited from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, remains to a degree intact. And if you want to make a comparison with the modern system of servants and maid servants with what you find in the Muslim world of today, you'll be surprised. Now, they have no right to keep slaves, I agree, because Islam does not permit you any right to buy slaves after once it was done away with. Yet, as they keep slaves, this is what I am pointing out, at least they stick to the older values of civil attitude and kind attitude towards your slaves, which they inherited from early Islam. So this was the most wonderful solution which Islam proposed and enacted for the removal of slavery, and no better system can be imagined even today. Do it with one stroke of the pen as suggested, and see what happens to the economy, to those slaves themselves. They would be left high and dry either to beg or to steal or to rob. They would have nothing for themselves, because the slavery, as I have told you, was also a means of livelihood for the slaves themselves. You do away with the slavery and leave them to shift for themselves, and you can imagine what might have happened to the economy of that people and those times, and also the social problems might have been created. I mean, this requires the longest treatment, but the time is short, so I think it should suffice for the time being. After you, I should like Dr. Sahib, you were the first, in fact, please. You know, because Social Sahib comes from Pakistan, so I have made it a general practice to give them preference for a while. So this is why I made him number one and made you number two. But the second man was from England, so there was no need to prefer him to you.
Quite all right.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Right.
During the last annual convention held here, you expressed wish that members of the community should visit our new missions.
Yes.
And observe.
Which you did, I hope.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I took my wife and children and visited 7 missions.
7, mashallah.
Yes, sir.
Did well.
2 older ones and 5 new ones.
Yes.
And I wanted to share my happiness and joy after seeing the great blessings which Allah has showered. In Brussels, new mission in Brussels,
yes.
just in the outskirts.
Yes.
And then we went to
You started your journey from Basra. That was the first leg.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And then we went to The Hague,
Yes.
which is an old mission.
Of course, yes.
And after that, Nunspeet.
Nunspeet.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That was the mission where it is, of course, great big buildings and
Yes.
great accommodation.
Quite.
And while we were there were another 3 families, together. They came, and it was plenty of space to accommodate
Quite.
everybody.
Yes.
And
And the area is so beautiful and peaceful, you know.
It's quite peaceful. Yes,
It's very
sir.
peaceful area.
It's really nice to visit and see and stay there. So we visited there as well. And
Did you also see the small diminutive monkeys?
no, sir. We were told, but because we had quite a few things on our mind to go and visit quite a few places, and
That is also a place worthy of visit, you know.
Yes, sir.
Because the monkeys there are unique. That was the first time I saw such monkeys in the world. Previously I had seen so many zoos, but never came across a monkey, full-grown monkey of this size, you know.
That's right.
4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches. And it was a complete full monkey with very bright brain and very active habits and very docile too. Much more dependable friend than other monkeys are. You know, it would jump over your shoulders and sit and never would bite you or harm you in any way. Very friendly thing.
Yes, sir.
And it's a very interesting thing to see a full-grown monkey of that size. And they swarm you, the place, in thousands and thousands. When I was showing my children those monkeys, you know, they would, if you extend your hand like this, spread it out, they would think that you are offering them some food. So immediately come and sit over your arms and shoulders. So one of my daughters was so afraid of monkeys that she was keeping her hand close tight to her body, lest the monkey should get the impression that she wants to offer. And while she was doing it, a monkey was sitting right over her shoulder. You know, seeing what was happening, you know. So you missed that anyway.
That's right, sir.
Yes.
And then we went to Germany. There were 4 missions there. Of course, we went there to Frankfurt, which is an old one.
And also the Nasserbach.
We went to Cologne first, sir.
I see.
And
Cologne, yes.
That's right, sir. And it's a huge, of course,
Yes, it's a
place.
beautiful,
And,
huge building, and also the situation is so good.
Quite, yes, sir.
Right in the middle of the town, in the best
Quite
area.
right, sir. Yes, sir. And there also I learned that it's not only a gift from God, very cheaply bought, but also the sustenance or maintenance is also provided there.
That is also a gift from God.
That's right. It's just like somebody giving.
Don't differentiate between this and that as one being gift and the other being just
not at
our
all.
own effort.
It's just like somebody giving me a motor car as a gift, and also saying, all right, I'll provide you with
Maintenance,
petrol.
yes, that's right.
So
That is what has been done in Nunspeet as well.
Right.
Nunspeet.
Yes, sir.
Both the buildings were spacious enough
Yes, sir.
for us to rent out a portion thereof.
Yes, sir.
And if we had not done that, the maintenance cost would be so high, it would be very difficult. In fact, it would become a white elephant.
Quite right.
So already God had so ordained that a portion which we did not require was rented out already at a rate and that which could look after the maintenance of the rest of the building.
That's
Rest
right.
of the building.
Yes, sir.
So we are maintaining them free of cost.
Yes, sir. That's right. And also I forgot to mention there, sir, the sweet fruit which we had at Belgium, in Brussels.
Yes,
Very sweet and delicious plums,
yes, that's right.
and of 2 or 3 varieties there.
That's quite right.
And
So
we
you,
did some caramel and ate as well.
that's right. The
And,
caramel for your own belly.
And it was nice, children enjoyed as well.
Very good.
And then we went down to Nasserbau.
Yes.
Well, that was still another good, very pleasant surprise there. And there, as a matter of fact, children didn't want to move away. So they want.
It's a beautiful place, a very, very good surrounding and
Yes,
lovely atmosphere.
So we set up our caravan there and put up the awning and stayed there for a while.
Good.
And then also we went to Munich. And that also is a very nice place in the outskirts.
That I have not yet seen because that was only bought 2-3 months ago.
Correct. Yes, sir. But it's also a beautiful place.
Nice
here.
place?
And also, yes,
Very
sir.
good.
Downstairs we have quite a big place for the mosque area.
That I know because
And,
all it was,
yes, sir.
all the details of the building was sent
That
to me.
also
before it
has
was approved.
good fruit trees as well, there also.
You did some caramel there as well?
It was already done for us. So
Okay.
I just wanted to share my joy with others as well, and
Alhamdulillah.
thank God for this blessing, really.
Jazakumullah. Any other? Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
This is an incident which I would like to describe and have your views on it.
Please.
What happened was one of my friends mentioned that another friend of mine mentioned to him that he would like to be, he wished that he was like me. He mentioned
Like a
to
race.
him,
Yes,
and
that's right. Yes.
said he is a real fundamentalist. I immediately asked what did, because the word fundamentalist at the moment is used in a rather
Right,
very dubious
yes,
way.
wrong
I asked him
connotation,
what
yes.
sense he meant. He said he meant in a good sense. Now, I have been reading about this word Muslim fundamentalist and Christian fundamentalist, but as far as I can see from the real meaning of the word, it means strict adherence to any religion.
The principles, the roots,
of the religion.
yes, the roots.
So it is a good thing, but they at the moment the word used
Exactly.
in media and used by the scholars, different scholars, it is rather they have made it a bad
It
word.
has acquired a completely different connotation now, which is bad, which is not good. I understand that, yes. What is the question then?
Yes, Adur's view on it, because if we use this word
I
fundamentalist,
agree with you that, for instance, Ahmadis are fundamentalists, truly, in the true essence, because fundamentalist means the one who sticks to the foundations and does not change his shape, but the original plan is kept intact. So because we have reverted to the Quran and Sunnah of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam's times, and we have done away with all the innovations which were added to Islam by later centuries. So in the true sense of the word, we are the fundamentalists. But by fundamentalist nowadays, in the modern term, what is understood is completely a different picture, which we do not want to share with anyone else. With anyone, I mean. Because by fundamentalists they mean the Muslims of the medieval ages, not of the time of Muhammad. The Muslims who are very hard in their approach, who have no compromises, no cushioning, and their attitude is extremely aggressive to those who do not agree with them, who would immediately take resort to use of force on the smallest, the pettiest differences. So if you are a hardcore, so-called hardcore Muslim, who has no tolerance at all towards difference of opinion, that is what a fundamentalist is, according to the modern term of the word fundamentalist. So we are farthest removed from that. So in the true sense of the word, we are indeed fundamentalist, and I think we have the right to call ourselves the only fundamentalists. And in other sense, as I have explained, we are farthest removed from this.
I also read I think it was an advertisement in one of the news magazine, Economist, about the group of scholars have written about impact of Islam, and especially with reference to the fundamental fundamentalism in Islam.
Yes.
They mentioned that. It was just an advertisement.
What they say is simply, they refer to the medieval Islam. Now, they have a reason why they use the word fundamentalist for those Muslims of the medieval ages which ceased to grow further in any direction and got stuck to the concept of Islam held in those ages. Why they call them fundamentalists is because in those ages new philosophies were influencing the world of Islam. And some schools of Muslim jurisprudence as well as some schools of Muslim philosophy and theorists stuck to what they inherited from their past. And they declared all those who went for the acceptance of new philosophies or new ways of life, or even granted a compromise with them as innovatists who were making innovations in Islam. So there was a big fight between these pleaders of new ideas, those who pleaded that the new ideas are not enemies of Islam, but in fact they have no clash. Islam should be continuously seen in the light of the human progress. So those were declared as murtadeen and kuffar, that's a renegades, etc. And many times they were burned, not burnt alive, but killed and slaughtered and punished heavily and lashed. Even sometimes their graves were opened long after they had been buried, and their bones were defiled and thrown out. So the modern non-Muslim world of the present day, they look only up to that age. What Islam they find in those days, fighting with each other, in the infights between the various Muslim groups of Islam, they divide those groups into two. Those who are orthodox, they are called fundamentalists, say, in one larger bracket. So that is the term which they inherited from the Middle Ages, in fact. But their term of fundamentalism does not go beyond those centuries. While Islam started and took its roots from the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not later on. So truly speaking, the word fundamentalism should have been translated as the Islam which we find at the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in theory and in practice, and nothing more. Yes, please.
We base our argument against Christianity that
against
Christianity that Jesus Christ came for 12 tribes of Israelite only, and while he came, only two were present at that time over there, but 10 tribes were
already migrated. Yes, yes.
And so we said that he had to go to 10 tribes as well. So and he did so. And Islam is the religion for all world and all times to come. But one of my friends questioned that if that is so, why Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam not personally went to all these places?
Right.
And why we say that Jesus had to go to personally?
We say that because Jesus himself had said it and Muhammad has not said it. We say that because Jesus himself, peace be upon him, had himself told his followers that he was to leave them and go towards the lost tribes of Israel. So because he had said it, so he must have followed it. Muhammad never said that now I leave Arabia and I am going to travel the whole world to deliver the message personally. Where has he said it? Have you ever found this mentioned in any hadith? Any other question, please? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. In the Holy Quran, we find sayings concerning the Holy Prophet that لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. And again also in the Holy Quran there is that إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. And if I'm not mistaken, at another place we have it that مَنْ أَطَاعَ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهَ.
Is that a verse of the Holy Quran?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Full verse, please. من أطاع الله فقد أطاع الرسول فقد أطاع الله. What is the full verse, please? Huh? All right. Yes, he has got it. With him, he'll read the full verse for you, right?
Yes.
But do you have to wait till the full verse is recited, or your question can be formed without it?
I think Huzur has understand my meaning without even waiting for him.
You should wait for the verse to be read out. Yes, okay, we'll do that. This is why I asked, so that you can frame your question according to this, the subject matter of this verse fully. Which surah is it?
Surah Al-Sahaba.
Yes, please.
Page 91.
The pages, it doesn't matter in the Holy Quran. The pages change from print to print. Read the three verses. Put this in the middle and read first one preceding it, and then one following it.
ما أصابك من حسنة فمن الله وما أصابك من سيئة فمن نفسك وأرسلناك للناس رسولا وكفى بالله شهيدا. Next one. من يطع الرسول فقد أطاع الله.
So this is it. Now, this is different from what he's read it.
من يطع الرسول فقد أطاع الله.
You know, when I was surprised why you said this is a verse of the Holy Quran, he had said it, Man ata Allah, ata Rasul faqad ata Allah. This is not a verse of the Holy Quran. Exactly. Not only that, but also instead of Muzari'ah, Mazi was used by him. And that I remembered was perhaps the words of the Hadith, not of the Holy Quran. Man ata'ani, it's a word to that effect. Faqad ata Allah. Man ata amiri faqad ata'ani wa man ata'ani faqad ata Allah. So it's okay. Now this is what I wanted to clarify. Man yuti rasula faqad. Please go ahead. The question is yet not clear. Yes. Hafiza. Next. فإذا برزوا من عندك بيت طائفة منهم غير الذي تقول والله يكتب ما يبيتون فأعرض عنهم وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا. Right, no, it's okay. Now please, in view of this, what is the question?
You know, I was not so sure of the word, that's why in the beginning I said, if I'm not mistaken, I wasn't sure whether it is true.
Okay, no, I agree.
And
tell me the question.
The compound meaning of all these verses I have mentioned is that the Holy Prophet is a holy and solely example for us. We have to follow him in either.
Correct.
Now, the question comes that in view of the fact that the Holy Prophet's life is divided into two parts, the prophetic part and the non-prophetic part.
Correct.
Now, these verses refer to which part? You know, I was asked this question, and I tried to explain, but
this question has already been answered by Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, by the Holy Prophet of Islam. It so happened once, then some people were planting, shifting the saplings of date trees while they were small from one place to the other. This was the custom of the Arabs. They planted the dates in one place like we do with paddy crops. And after a while, when the sapling has come out, then they remove it and put it at different places at regular distances. So that is exactly what they were doing. Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked them what they were doing, and was answered that we were shifting these saplings to some other ground and creating some distance. He said, why are you wasting the labor? Let them be here and let them grow and let it be suffice for you. So they did it. And after a while, when they grew further, they all burnt out and nothing of them was left. So they went to complain to Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, look here, Ya Rasulullah, we trusted you fully, you are the Prophet of God. You advised us not to transfer them from here to the other place, and we have lost the whole crop. So Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them that I have been appointed a prophet of Allah to you, not as a farmer of Allah. In the worldwide affairs, you should follow your own wisdom and customs. In religious affairs, I have been appointed your guide. Follow me. And there you will never come across anything wrong. Any harm, no harm would come your way if you follow me there. So he has made it himself very clear.
Yes, sir. Huzur, there is another question, probably two more questions, because this may be my last Majlis Irfan.
Please go ahead. Go
Yes,
ahead.
sir.
Find out, yes.
When you read about those Jahannam or hell,
Yes.
and Jannat in the Holy Quran, it is our concept, we the Ahmadis, that Dozakh or Jahannam or hell is not everlasting.
Not?
Everlasting. And
Yes, that's right. You're correct. Everlasting.
everlasting.
Yes.
And Jannah is everlasting.
Right.
But there are certain verses of the Holy Quran, I do not remember well, but they are in a row, whereby the qualities of hell are also Madamat Samawati wal Ardi, and also the qualities of Jannat also are mentioned in the same words.
The same verse,
Yes, sir.
which you have referred to, has the answer of this question. This description of hell's duration and that is repeated in the description of heaven in the same place, but with one addition. And you cannot ignore that difference of treatment. Can you read out from, do you remember this verse where it is, in which chapter it is?
So that portion is Atan Dharamaj.
But I want the whole verse to be read. This is what I mean. You know, if you read the whole verse, the same words which you have just mentioned are used regarding the hell as well as regarding the heaven, but with one addition regarding the heaven. Atan Ghaira Marzuz. It is a gift from Allah which will never come to an end. But in case of hell, this is not said. It is Ghaira Marzuz. So there is a difference. And in view of this and other descriptions of hell and heaven in different places, I once answered this question here, not only once but many a time, and also I drew the attention of the audience at that time to one very important psychological fact, that the misery, although it is shorter in duration, seems to be almost never ending, while the pleasure, if it is intense, however long in duration may it be, it seems to have left us within just batting of an eyelid. So that also is to be taken into consideration in the description of hell and heaven in the Holy Quran. What people of hell would feel is sometimes described as never-ending, everlasting or something like this. Khalidina fiha, which means that as far as they are concerned, the inmates of hell would feel as if the hell is everlasting, it would never come to an end. If somebody is imprisoned for life, sometimes he prefers to die, and many a prisoner in England have chosen to die out, die in a shootout rather than remain prisoners for life, because the torture or the punishment in itself is, creates a psychological attitude towards time, which makes it appear that the time is elongated, has spread out, much more than its actual duration. While on the other hand, as you know, as all the poets of the world know, the time of prayer is always short-lived. So when the Holy Quran tells us that the Jannah would be everlasting, which means it would really be something, never-ending. Otherwise, it's being most pleasurable, yet appearing to be everlasting means that it would really be everlasting. Otherwise, no pleasure appears to be everlasting. Even if it was 1,000 times more than hell, if the inmates of the heaven feel it is everlasting, it has to be everlasting. Otherwise, even after 10,000 years or 1,000,000 years, they would tell Allah that only it had just started and you have taken it away from us. Like many a poet have complained to Allah that you gave us a few hours of pleasure, and is that what you have done to us? Is that all you could give us? And in a matter of a jitty, the whole pleasure is finished and gone. Why nadani ke waqt mar ye sabit hua, khab tha jo kuch ke dekha, jo suna afsana tha. That sort of thing is being said by every poet. मांग के लाए थे 4 दिन ना, दो आरज़ू में कट गए 2 इंतजार में, और भी है गुनाह के मुतालिक। देखें हमने हौसले परवरदिगार के, एक फुर्सत है गुनाह मिली, वो भी 4 दिन। देखें हमने हौसले परवरदिगार के। A poet says that God gave us respite, or permitted us to enjoy sin for only a few days, 2, 3, 4 days, that's all. While all their lives, which may have lasted many years, they remained committed to sin, a life of sin. But when it passed, it appeared to be just nothing. But you suffer for a while and it seems to be never ending. Even one night sometimes looks like an age. So the Holy Quran should be read in that perspective as well. It wants to create certain impressions on us, and the language it uses directly relates to our psyche, and it should be understood in our own internal human terms. So when the Holy Quran says sometimes the hell is everlasting, because in other places it gives out a contradictory statement to this as well. So the situation we face is why at some places the Holy Quran says Aqaba, what's the full verse?
لابسين فيها أحقاب.
What?
لابسين فيها أحقاب.
Labisina fiha Aqaba, yes. That they would stay in hell only for a few 80 years. Haqab is 80 years. Aqaba is the plural of 80 years. So Aqaba means a few 80 years. And at another place the Holy Quran tells us, as you have just mentioned, Ma damatis samawatu wal ard. So there has to be some compromise between the two statements. While as far as the heaven goes, nowhere the Holy Quran has put any limitation on the duration of heaven at all. The problem only arises vis-a-vis hell. So this is the solution I am proposing. When the Holy Quran tells us regarding hell that it is unlimited in time or everlasting in time, it only refers to our feeling, our perceptions of hell. Even if somebody is punished for 1,000 years, the way the punishment is described in the Holy Quran, it would look like, everlasting, never-ending period. So the people, the Holy Quran is warning us. As far as you are concerned, for you the hell would look like an everlasting punishment. Served us enough notice. So it is very essential for the Holy Quran to paint a very ugly picture of hell so that we fully become aware of what we face, what we are in for, if we don't desist from sinning. So this is why sometimes the emphasis is made on the longevity of hell. But as I've already mentioned in other places, there are clear-cut indications that hell will not last forever. And again, Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, who was the recipient of the Holy Quran, has explained that hell will never not be everlasting. He has told us in detail of what is going to happen to hell at the end of some time. He says that almost all the inmates of the hell would have been released at a time later on, and only one would be left. And then how he will be permitted to leave hell and creep his way into heaven. That's a very interesting not a story, but description we find in Hadith. So that description of hell coming to an end could not contradict the Holy Quran. It is impossible. It is impossible to find any contradiction between Muhammad's sayings and the Holy Quran. So that also supports my view that the hell would ultimately end positively, but where it seems to be described as everlasting, the reason why is that for the inmates of hell, the time would appear to be everlasting.
Another question is that the common practice in non-Muslim countries,
yes,
especially in my country, is that
you said non-Muslim countries? Common practice in non-Muslim countries.
Yes.
But your country is not a non-Muslim country, is it?
Well, it is on the paper according to...
But you have the majority of Muslims in Uganda, haven't you? No?
Not at all.
I see. That is the impression we received earlier.
It was the impression created by Idi Amin's...
I see.
Yeah.
So actually it is not so?
Not so.
Okay, all right. So I stand corrected.
Yeah, so, they do not consider religious ceremonies during marriages as something important. So someone simply takes a woman and they keep on staying in the same house for years and years and they consider themselves married. Whereas actually they are not married neither from the cultural point of view or from the religious point of view. Now, what would be the case of such a person having accepted the Ahmadiyyat when the marriage background...
Now tell me, is that custom? an established custom of certain tribes in which it is not looked down upon as an act of sin or an act of violation of the system of life which those tribes have inherited? Or is that act of living together without a formal marriage is looked at by the same tribes to be a regular way and as an alternative of marriage? How they look upon it?
In the areas I have been operating, they consider it to be a secondary marriage.
Of course, so
in a formal.
that should be accepted as a marriage.
Yes, sir.
If in such cases the tribal customs legalize this way of life, and where the woman is responsible to husband and husband is responsible to that woman, that wife, and they have already got established in the society as a regular couple, then you shouldn't bother about that. Because Islam accepts every way of bringing man and wife together openly and correctly, whatever way society has chosen to do that. Otherwise, in case of non-Muslims becoming Muslims, you have to repeat their nikah ceremony each time and consider the earlier children to be, illegitimate, which you never do. The mushrikeen also married in their own way, whatever it was. And we don't find a single incident where in the time of Islam, early Islam, that is starting from Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the end of Khilafat, etc., any marriage being repeated, because earlier that was done according to the custom of the mushrikeen. So whatever non-Islamic customs regarding marriage are concerned, they are all legalized in Islam and accepted as a legal instrument of marriage. This is why the first verse which is read out in the nikah ceremony during the nikah is addresses not the Muslims, but addresses the whole mankind. It says, Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum allazi khalaqakum. That is also an indication that the marriage ceremony is common between man and man, and no religious distinction will be made as far as the performance of nikah is concerned. And no nikah would be considered invalid, even if it is done according to Christian way or Hindu way or whatever way it is. So the first verse doesn't address Muslims at all. It says, Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum allazi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida, and refers to the system of marriage not only inherited by us from the early man, but mentions a system of marriage which is in operation in the life earlier than man came into being. The same verse does it. Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum allazi khalaqakum min nafsin wahidatin. There is no question of human life appearing in the world at this point. وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. Still mankind is not mentioned. وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا, whatever they were. Nafs wahida got duplicated and a new system was introduced. It was sexual system of reproduction. That is, خَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالٌ كَثِيرٌ وَالنِّسَاءَ. بَثَّ مِنْهُمَا, for the first time refers to the coming into being of men and women. Bassa minhuma rijalan kathirun wa nisa. Previously, the early life is not mentioned as men and women. Before men and women came into being, the life got bifurcated into two types. It says, خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ, that is one stage. وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, that is the second stage. And when life was already divided into male and female, then human beings got were created later on. They were created not from one human being, but they were already created from some couple of some sort. According to this, the order explained in this verse of the Holy Quran. So from this I infer why this has been, I'm pointing out that why this particular verse has been adopted by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be made as a part of nikah ceremony regularly once and for all. Because the Holy Quran wants to point out that nikah is not a speciality of Muslims, or nikah is not a monopoly of Muslims. Nikah is held all over the world, and nikah is a monopoly of mankind. So wherever a nikah is performed in mankind, whatever way it is performed, as long as it is open and accepted by the society where we find such marriages ceremonized, it should be accepted. It cannot be declared illegal. And later on, when you refer to the other two verses, there no nikah is mentioned. The nikah is only mentioned in the first verse. And in the first verse, the address is to the whole mankind, not to the Muslims. So it leaves no room for Muslims to monopolize nikah as the only valid instrument of bringing man and wife together, man and woman together. It may be a rather intricate way of inference, but I'm quite certain that this is the underlying philosophy of this choice of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That the first verse of nikah, which really deals with the subject of nikah, is not addressed to the Muslims, but to the whole mankind. So their way should be accepted. If it is an accepted way, if it is an overt way and not a covert way. This is why elan nikah, that is announcement of nikah, is essential. This is why walima is held in public, so that for everybody, a section of the society becomes witness of this contract. So if that is what you are referring to, happens in your country in some tribes, if it is an open, overt contract, and if the society takes it as a sort of nikah, and if then woman and man both have mutual rights on each other and mutual responsibilities, then of course you should not bother about that. But if that is considered to be a sort of adultery in the tribes which you are referring to, then in such cases nikah should be performed. They should not be made to separate even in that case. Because nikah is for the creation of responsibility. And if you do away with such such way of life entirely by declaring that this is illegal way of life, so man and wife should immediately get separated, you will be defeating the spirit of nikah in Islam. Because then who will take the responsibility of the children? So many involvements have arisen, has been born out of this way of life, of their staying together, that they have to be looked after. So as a missionary in charge, what you should do is that you should, in case as I have mentioned, that is not considered to be a sort of marriage, but it is considered to be illegal even by those tribes. In that case, you should ask them to become regular husband and wife according to Islamic way and perform a nikah ceremony. As far as their past is concerned, Allah will forgive them, but as far as their future is concerned, it should be legalized. Don't tell them to immediately separate and done away with the marriage. That will create a lot of problems and that will be against the spirit of Islam.
Thank you.
So is that all? I think it's time now for us to say the Isha prayer.